Definition of Ijarah. Ijarah is a term of Islamic fiqh. Literally, it means to give something on rent. The term of Ijarah is used in two situations. First situation is meant to employ the services of a person on wages. Like example, a hire or porter at the airport to carry his luggage. And another type of Ijarah relates to paying rent for use of an asset or property defined as land in Islamic economic. In Bank Muamalat, this financing is based on the principle of Al-Ijarah. By definition, Al-Ijarah is a contract where the benefits use of an asset is transferred by the owner to the lessee at an agreed price or rental amount for an agreed period of time or lease period. Ijarah is an Islamic alternative of leasing. Leasing backed by an acceptable contract is an acceptable transaction under Sharia. The question of whether or not the transaction of leasing in Sharia compliant depends on the term of and condition of the contract. Several characteristics of conventional agreement may not conform to Sharia, thus making the transaction un-Islamic and thereby invoking a prohibition. Ijarah is a concept used in Islamic commerce. Ijarah denotes a contract where one party transfers the right to use an item he owns to another party for a specific period in exchange for an agreed consideration. Colloquially, Ijarah is often called Islamic leasing. However, this appellation is misleading because Ijarah may also be used for non-leasing arrangements such as employment. In general, Muslim scholars define Ijarah as owning a specific benefit for an asset against a consideration. In particular, there are various definitions of Ijarah set by the Muslim scholars as the four schools of jurisprudence have given different explanations to the meaning of Ijarah, which are illustrated as follows. First, the Maliki. The Maliki school define Ijarah as a transfer of ownership of permitted usufruct for a known period in exchange for compensation or price. Second, the Hanbali. The Hanbali school has described Ijarah as a contract where the subject matter is lawful and for defined use al-manfa'ah, corporeal object, is also lawful and determined and for a specific period of time. Third, the Hanafi. The Hanafi define Ijarah as a contract intended to give ownership of a determined and legitimate usufruct al-manfa'ah for a rent corporeal object against a consideration. And the last is Ash-Shafi'i. Ash-Shafi'i view Ijarah as a contract where the subject matter is determined, legitimate, acceptable and lawful usufruct of an object against a fixed consideration.
The legitimacy of the Ijarah contract is derived from the Quran and founded on the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad SAW, the consensus of Muslim jurists which is ijma', and analogy which is qiyas. It was common to run a livestock or beast of burden to work plantations, carry loads, mill grain, or pull caravans. Some form of payment would have been made to the owner for the right to use or usufruct of the animals. Usufruct also applies to the right to use human labor and service. One of the quoted references in the Quran in verse 1, in which a verb form of the word Ijarah is used to describe service rendered by Prophet Musa (AS) to Prophet Shu'aib (AS). In the Quran, Surah Al-Qasas, verse 27 means, and said one of them, the two women, O my father, hire him. Verily, the best kind of man for you to hire is strong and trustworthy. He said, I intend to wed one of these two daughters of mine to you on condition that you serve me for 8 years. But if you complete 10 years, it will be a favor from you. But I intend not to place you under difficulty. If Allah wills, you will find me one of the righteous. The book verses describe the story of Prophet Musa AS being hired for a certain period of time to undertake a specific task. The compensation for the task undertaken by the Prophet is deemed as a payment for the outstanding dowry for his marriage. In the hadith of Prophet Muhammad SAW, Abdullah ibn Umar narrated the Prophet Muhammad SAW said, "Pay the hire worker his wages before his sweat dries off." Ibn Majah, Sunan Ibn Majah, hadith number 2443. Time, Ijarah came to refer to a contract under which a lessor transfers the usufruct of an item to a lessee for a specific period for an agreed payment or a series of payments. Muslim jurists applied rules based on Al-Quran and As-Sunnah to govern commercial contracts, including Ijarah. With industrialization, Ijarah for the usufruct of beasts of burden and humans was joined by Ijarah for the usufruct of machinery and motorized vehicles. Thus, Ijarah came to be in the form we are familiar with today.
There are four elements of Ijarah, which is the contracting parties, offer and acceptance, contract matter, and consideration. Firstly, is the contracting parties. There must be at least two parties entering into an Ijarah contract, a person giving a lease or lessor, and a person accepting the lease or lessor. Both contracting parties should be fully qualified or possess legal capacity to execute the contract. They must be sane, adult and free. Thus, a mentally incapacitated person like a child and innocent person cannot enter into an Ijarah contract except when such transaction is conducted by a legal representative or wali or guardian. In case of a child, then the contract will render valid. In addition, both contracting parties must voluntarily consent to enter into the Ijarah contract without any consent. When one of the parties executes the contract against his free will, then the contract will become voidable. Next element is offer and acceptance. This is the same in any kind of contract. In Ijarah, the ijab and qabul refer a situation where one party offer to give an object or lease and another party accepts such offer. The general rule of contract have laid down some guidelines for perfecting a valid offer and acceptance. Firstly, an offer and acceptance must be expressed clearly to show the party intention. Such expression may be indicated orally or by writing or signal each. Secondly, a definite acceptance is made in response to a definite offer in the same section. Thirdly, offers must be correspond exactly with an offer. For example, a person say, "I lease the house to you." The other party must pronounce his consent by saying, "I accept the leased house" or "I accept." In addition, subject matter also important element in Ijarah. The subject matter of an Ijarah contract refer to a usufruct of mana derived from a specific object. Thus, a usufruct will only exist when the object in which such usufruct is attached to it is existent. For example, in the case of renting a house, the house must basically exist because the benefit of renting the house will not be obtained if there is no house in existence except in forward ijazah. The usufruct to be leased out must satisfy certain conditions, namely it must be legitimate in Sharia, it is known by both lessor and lease, it is a benefit that is capable to be handed over to the lease, it has no defect which could make it incompetent to give intended benefit to the lease, and it is used to delimit certain agreed period. The object in which an usufruct is attached to be must in the form tangible asset or property. And the last point is consideration. Ijarah contract is executed between the contracting parties against a consideration which is known as a rent. The condition of rent it should be certain and known to both parties. In addition, they must also agree a method of paying the rent, either by cash or check or standing order through the bank account. If there is no such agreement, then the local custom that govern such transaction will be referred to.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad AIZAT bin ISHAK. My metric number is 059418. I will continue the characteristic of Ijarah. First, Ijarah Thumma al-Bain. In this deal, the customer leases a product and then decides to buy it paying installment, so that at the conclusion of the lease, it has full ownership of the product. This comprises two contracts which are in Ijarah that specifies the conditions for leasing or renting for a specified amount of time, and a buy that demands of sale be finalized at the end of the Ijarah term. An Ijarah transaction involves two components. First, a purchase agreement and a lease. You go out and find the property you would like us to purchase on your behalf. You negotiate the price and other aspects of the purchase. You make an initial payment of earnest money to reserve the property. You make sure that the purchase contract allows bank to step into the transaction as the buyer. The bank then buys the property. At the closing, the bank enters into an agreement to sell the property to you for a fixed price. The purchase price the bank paid plus any transaction costs not paid by you at the closing. Ownership of the property is transferred to you after this price has been paid to the bank. A payment schedule is established so that in exchange for keeping the property rented, your payments are different over time. Thank you. After that, Ijarah wa Iqtina. It could include both a lease agreement and a selling agreement. However, in an Ijarah wa Iqtina agreement, ownership is transferred as soon as the lease pays the asset purchases price at any point during the lease period. Next, Ijarah Mawsufa bil-Iltima. The services or benefit being leased is clearly stated in an Islamic forward Ijarah or Ijarah Mawsufa bil-Iltima contract, but the specific unit providing that service or benefit is not mentioned. Therefore, the contract is not null and void if the unit providing the service or benefit is destroyed. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is FAIZAH binti JUWARI with matrix number 061453. Here, I would like to share an explanation regarding one of Sharia principle called Ijarah. Basically, Ijarah means to give something on rent. Under the concept of Ijarah in Islamic banking, a customer can use an asset or equipment which is owned by an Islamic bank for a fixed period against a fixed price. Ijarah is very similar to a leasing contract, and the asset under the Ijarah finance could be used for car, home, plant, or machinery. The Ijarah contract may be defined as a legal binding contract where the owner of something with value transfers its usufruct to other party for a predefined period in exchange of an agreed consideration. There are three types of Ijarah listed that distinguish it from conventional leasing, which are firstly, the lessor must own the asset being leased for the entire period of the lease. Secondly, no compound interest may be charged if the lessee delays or defaults on payment. And lastly, the third feature is that use of the asset being leased must be specified in the contract. There are also three types of Ijarah in Islamic banking. Firstly, Ijarah Tasghiliyah, which is operating Ijarah. It is a simple rental agreement in which the leased asset remains in the ownership of lessor and comes back to him after the lease period. The second Ijarah is Ijarah wa Iktina, a hire purchase where the intention of lessee is to acquire the ownership of asset, but due to certain reasons and in particular due to some tax concessions, they show Ijarah. After the lease period, corpus of the leased asset transfers to the lessee without any new contract and paid rental becomes price. It is permissible under some conditions. Last type of Ijarah is Ijarah Muntahiyah Bitamlik, a financial Ijarah. The intention is same, only difference is that the corpus of leased asset is transferred by the lessee by execution of sale agreement or by gift. Lease agreement has an express clause to this effect. It is also impermissible for two reasons, which are: one, transaction is tied up with another transaction, and the second is lessee does not bear the responsibility of lessor. With that, I conclude my explanation regarding types, operations of each Ijarah and the features. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NAJWAN HAQIMI bin JEFRI. I will discuss about the current state and issue regarding Al-Ijarah Summa Al-Bay, or also known as ITAB. Unfortunately, despite being one of the most demanding Islamic banking facilities, ITAB still lacks a Sharia regulatory framework. The Malaysian government is considering the potential of enacting legislation specifically for ITAB. However, the concept has yet to be achieved. As a result, any dispute emerging from the transaction shall be addressed to the conventional regulations. The lack of Sharia framework has caused one of the main issues in ITAB, which is the misunderstanding of ITAB. Many people are unaware of the fundamental distinctions between ITAB and a conventional hire purchase option. This is mostly because of their impression of ITAB as being similar to conventional hire purchase, particularly in their operations, documentation, and legal prescriptions. Some people accuse ITAB of being merely another technique to impose interest through a backdoor, despite its Arabic name, which seems more Islamic. Bank Negara and the banking industries should work together to establish a more comprehensive ITAB facility. Inviting the public to participate in this process would raise their understanding and awareness of the product indirectly. Legal professionals must play a significant role in addressing legal concerns in ITAB through discussion and research. Efforts must be made by all individuals, not just scholars, and should include the government, banking companies, legal professionals, and the general public. By improving the current legal and regulatory framework, the government, through administrative ministries and judiciary bodies, should strive to offer a well-built avenue for Islamic hire purchase ITAB to be operated efficiently. Efforts should thus be undertaken to create a legal structure to manage the transaction and settle potential issues emerging from ITAB transactions. That's all from me. Thank you.